Hey there and welcome back to another Rise of the Guardians video. And today, we'll be once again trekking down memory lane and lamenting what could have been in regards to the franchise. What stories we could have seen play out on screen had the first film not been financially unsuccessful. Could we have had sequel films? Or a Netflix series like so many of their other franchises? Most likely. Oh man, now I've made myself sad again. Regardless, in the past couple of weeks I've been making videos talking through the backstories that have been revealed over the course of the various different books of the Guardians of Childhood series, all of which have mostly been released in the aftermath of the film. We started off with Pitch Black and his hero origin story that eventually led to him becoming corrupted by the forces of darkness. We followed that up with talking about Santa's origin as an outlaw turned toy maker. Easter Bunny was the last survivor of a mystical race of giant bunny men. We then came to Toothiana, who's in a blood feud with a man turned into a monkey, who wiped out her entire family and is now one of Pitch Black's minions, and we finished up with Sandman, whose origins honestly aren't all that different to what we've seen in the actual film. Only instead of being a weird little fella flying around on a cloud made of sand giving out good dreams, instead, he was a weird little fella flying around on shooting stars granting wishes to people when they saw him in the sky. And yeah, after reading through those backstories, I always seem to shed some salty tears at what could have been. And since there are still a couple of major characters left whose backstories remain unexplored, I figured now would be as good a time as any to continue to wander down this tragic path and make myself sad about what could have been, or maybe get myself hopeful for a reboot at some point. You never know. Maybe it will get its second chance one day. Percy Jackson did after all. And so today I thought that we'd talk through the backstory of one of the most key characters in the franchise, but not one that's really appeared in all that much detail during the film itself. And that character is, of course, if you've read the title, the Man in the Moon, aka Tsar Luna. And in the original film, this character, well, he's hardly a character at all. He's more a cosmic force, and he's apparently responsible for empowering each of the Guardians and bringing them together. But beyond that, his actual role in the story is super limited, and you understand that he's sort of important and powerful, but you don't actually learn anything about him. Everything you believe sort of needs to come from your own imagination. And for that point in time, I think that was pretty good. It was good to have this sort of mystery, to have a character that wasn't really explained, but just sort of existed as this godly force. A character who didn't get involved in the actual narrative, but still managed to be one of the major driving forces behind it in the end. A character that all the other characters strive to impress and emulate, but whose thoughts, feelings, and narrative voice remain completely unknown to the audience. At least any opinions beyond Pitch Black bad, Guardians good. And in that way, this character actually became the perfect sequel bait, perfect spin-off bait, perfect prequel bait, and no matter what direction you wanted to take the story in the future, this guy would be a character you could exploit to generate interest and narrative progression. His character was, and honestly even in the books still kind of is, an untapped goldmine of potential stories. You could easily milk an excellent mini-series or a special out of his backstory that had already been outlined within the books themselves. But of course, that ain't happening anytime soon, and so we need to content ourselves with what we can get. So with all that being said, let's work our way through his backstory, which is mostly outlined within the picture book, The Man in the Moon, but is also expanded on throughout basically every other book in little chunks here and there. And so, as always, this is really just a summary. For a full rundown of everything that happens in much more detail, buy the books by William Joyce. Support the author. Support the franchise. And maybe one day we'll get a reboot that closely follows the book storyline. Who knows? Anyway, the Man in the Moon was born during the intergalactic Golden Age, an era where all dreams were possible, and the galaxy was at peace, ruled over by benevolent families and protected by glorious heroes, who would keep the forces of darkness at bay. And the Man in the Moon was born into one such family, the noble house of Lunanoff, who were the premier family amongst the stars, and were beloved by all the other noble families and the peoples of the various different planets. So beloved that they were pretty much the only royalty of that era, the grand rulers of the universe. Pretty lucky they were nice people, hey? But anyway, the baby was born, and everything was hunky-dory. His parents were nice, his dad would show him the stars using his telescope, his mum would read to him by the light of a glowworm. Pretty ideal sort of life if you ask me. Kind parents, super rich, future ruler of the universe. I mean, he's riding high at this moment. And I mean, on top of that, he has a friend called Nightlight who's there to protect him should anything dangerous try to harm him. Not much to complain about at all. And guess where their house was? On a spaceship. That's pretty awesome. a spaceship called the Moon Clipper, on which his family and Nightlight would travel between the different worlds. And every night, Nightlight would sing him to sleep and would sprinkle dream sand over him, protecting him from any bad dreams and nightmares. And guess who that kind of pissed off? That's right, it's Pitch Black, whose whole deal is fear and nightmares. And so, by bragging that their kid has never had a nightmare and was always happy, that attracted his attention and invited his wrath upon themselves. And so, they're forced to flee. Because yeah, when a serial killer makes it known he's coming after you, I would argue that one of the best things you could do is to move house and hide. And this is exactly what they try to do, using the Moon Clipper to fly to Earth and disguising it as the moon. But Pitch discovers this, and the battle's on. A battle which sees the death of the Man in the Moon's parents, and the apparent deaths of Pitch Black and Nightlight, leaving poor little Man in the Moon all alone with, I don't know, I think he has some space animals with him at that point in time. So yeah, suddenly his life's pretty lonely. And so this was his existence, watching the constellations that his parents had turned into, using the moon as his own personal playground, and dreaming of the golden age and his lost friend Nightlight, until he grew older and decided that he needed to look after the children of Earth, and thus began to empower various different guardians to help him in his quest. And thus begins the story that we've seen play out across the chapter books in my previous videos. And honestly, whilst his backstory is pretty bare bones and doesn't really have much story content, it would have been an excellent story to see adapted nonetheless. His story is one of the few that would show this interstellar civilization at its height, to see this wondrous cosmic world. It would have been amazing to see this play out on screen, and I'm hopeful that one day, somebody important reads the books and realizes how interesting and unique they are. Seriously, that would fill the gaping void that Trollhunters has left behind. But anyway, that's all I really have to say about The Man in the Moon. And I would like to say that these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about The Man in the Moon? You think he could have made for a decent story, or maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.